Senator Josh Butler from The Guardian, thank you for your speech. In your speech, you claimed some Indigenous organisations, quote, want to demonise colonial settlement. Could I ask you, please, do you believe the history of colonisation continues to have an impact on some Indigenous Australians?
No. I'll be honest with you, no, I don't think so. Positive impact, absolutely. I mean, now we've got running water, we've got readily available food. I mean, everything that my grandfather had when he was growing up, because he first saw whitefellas in his early adolescence, we now have. Otherwise, he would have had to live off the land, provide for his family, and all of those measures, which Aboriginal Australians, many of us, have the same opportunities as all other Australians in this country. And we certainly have probably one of the greatest systems around the world in terms of the democratic structure in comparison to other countries. It is why migrants flock to Australia to call Australia home, because the opportunity that exists for all Australians. But if we keep telling Aboriginal people that they are victims, well, we are effectively removing their agency and then giving them the expectation that someone else is responsible for their lives. That is the worst possible thing you can do to any human being, is tell them that they are a victim without agency. And that's what I refuse to do.
So you don't believe that... Just as a quick follow-up, you don't believe there's any negative ongoing impacts of colonisation on Indigenous Australians today? Just to confirm.
No, there's no ongoing negative impacts of colonisation. What I will say, which I have suggested obviously within my speech, is that particularly for my family in remote communities, again, who live very close to traditional culture, who experience the highest rates of violence in the country, family violence, interpersonal violence, they experience that not because of the effects of colonisation, but because it's expected that young girls are married off to older husbands in arranged marriages. Women, we haven't had a feminist movement for Aboriginal women because we've been expected to toe the line when it's come to Aboriginal activism for the rights of our race, but the rights as women have been second place. And I have the lived experience, my mother has the lived experience as someone who was subject to traditional custom and expected to become a second wife in an arranged marriage. There are still people living this way in this country, and yet those who have held the narrative because they have had an education and access to media ignore the plight of those in communities, and this can't continue to go on.
Thank you.
We're moving into an area that goes well beyond the voice, but it is, I have talked to Indigenous people, and I'm sure others have too, who talk about generations of trauma among Indigenous Australians as a result of colonisation. Whether that means that colonisation continues now is probably a separate question, but would you accept that there have been generations of trauma as a result of that history?
Well, I guess that would mean that those of us whose ancestors were dispossessed of their own country and brought here in chains as convicts are also suffering from intergenerational trauma. So I should be doubly suffering from intergenerational trauma.
The next question is from Amanda Cobb.